Thank you for that, Anne. So today we're wrapping up our series on 1 Peter, looking at chapter 5, as has just been read to you. For those who may not know me, I'm Renata. To most of you, I am most frequently seen on the worship team playing bass, but I have been involved in various parts of our church leadership teams, including youth, doing a ministry internship, being on the preaching team, and currently being one of our elected elders over the last 17 years. In the New Living Translation, the section we are looking at starts off, "And now a word to you who are elders in the churches." And I'm going to pause there about a quarter of the way through the verse. Who is an elder in the church? I've just told you that I'm one of the elected elders here at Citywide, but Peter, nearly 2,000 years ago, wasn't talking about people who were elected under the most recent version of Citywide's constitution. Different denominations and different churches within some of those denominations have different ideas and expectations about what is required of an elder, both in terms of their role and personal qualities. Some, like Baptists, are elected by members, some are appointed by church leadership. Some places hold that being male is an essential requirement for eldership because women are not fit to be in position of authority, others do not. We're in the latter category there, in case you weren't sure. This isn't some surprise reveal where the church finds out that I'm not in fact a man. I don't think anyone has been confused about that, other than the one time UTAS gave me an alumni card identifying me as Mr. Renata Carmichael. But here we recognise women's leadership and actively have women on eldership, trustees, the preaching team, and in various other places as they live out their God-given callings. Now, some versions of eldership keep you forever once you're in, unless there is some form of misconduct or another significant thing that would lead to removal, while others have limited terms. Like many Baptist churches, we have a limited term and a maximum of 6 consecutive years before taking a minimum 1-year break is required. Now, what we can be certain on is that Peter is addressing people who are recognised within their church as having a level of authority and oversight because they are spiritually mature and wise. My opinion is that Peter's advice to elders here does not just apply to those recognised in a formal leadership structure. As Christians, we are called to live in community, and that is messier and more complicated than formal structures are. Many of us will be elders in our social groups and workplaces, and we need to treat those positions with due respect because we are called to be there and to honour God in what we do. There are a few kinds of authority that we can hold which may put any of us in a leadership or elder type role. Now, I would like to give you the proper source for this, but thanks to the way my brain files information, I haven't been able to track it down in time. If anyone wants to go on a treasure hunt looking for my source, it will have come from a Global Leadership Summit talk between about 2008 and 2015. There is likely a book from the speaker about it, and if you spot it, you can add it to comments online so that other people can check it out. But basically, there are 3 types of authority people can hold: delegated, situational, and relational. Delegated authority is the one we most easily recognise. That's where someone has authority because they've been given a role which includes authority. People who have delegated authority include religious leaders, police, teachers, managers at work, etc. These people have authority when performing the role, but that authority doesn't necessarily extend to anything outside that role. The next type is situational authority. Now, that is very much what it sounds like. In a situation, a person starts taking charge when they might not have positional authority or relational authority, and other people run with it because in that moment it seems right to allow that person to take charge. There are the more dramatic examples of this which occur in disaster situations like floods or car crashes before emergency services arrive. But there are also smaller examples, like occasionally you'll be out somewhere and you might see someone who is causing some problems or about to do something dangerous, and someone around there pulls out the voice. You might know it as the teacher voice or the dad voice, but if you can firmly and confidently give short instructions like sit down or put that down, a lot of people will instinctively want to follow that instruction before they process who you are or what is going on. An important thing to note about situational authority is that it is taken away as quickly as it is given, and there is no guarantee it will be given to start with. So you do need to be careful about trying to exercise it and know that it's not something that will have a lasting impact. The last type, which is most relevant to the natural eldership type roles you will find yourself in over life, is relational authority. This is where people look up to you and treat you as some sort of authority because of who they've seen you to be. When you walk through life with people, they will see who you are. And over time, you should develop maturity and wisdom which is recognisable. Whether or not you have a formally recognised leadership role, the people who look up to you are the flock which has been entrusted to you. They likely include friends and family, potentially work colleagues or members of social clubs or sports teams. Now, as an elected elder in this church, I am in the final year of my maximum term, and I don't just get to drop everything I'm about to say because my term's up. That's not how that works. There are people who look to me because of the relationship we have, and I need to value and respect that. Don't think any of this doesn't apply to you simply because you don't have an official title or role. Community is bigger and more complicated than that. Now, we have spent quite a lot of time on the first quarter of the first verse of the entire chapter that we're going to be looking at, but things are going to start moving a little bit more quickly. Peter identifies himself as being a fellow elder, placing himself about the same level as the people he is addressing, and setting the example for what he is about to say. Care for the flock God has entrusted to you willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you will get out of it, but because you are eager to serve God. Don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. And when the great shepherd comes, you will receive a crown of never-ending glory and honour. Some key words and phrases here in verse 2 are care, entrusted, willingly, not grudgingly, eager to serve. These are choices. These are active words. They're not things that happen passively. God chooses to entrust people to you to care for. Caring for people is an active thing you do. If you truly care about something, be it a person or a cause, there will be actions you take to express that care. Being willing is a choice, as is not doing things grudgingly. That doesn't mean you won't have days when you just aren't feeling it. We are all human and we all have moments like that. What it does mean is that our overall attitude to what we agree to do should be positive. If we are resenting something that we are regularly doing, then that's something we need to reassess. Why are we doing it? Should we be doing it? What's behind the attitude? What should we be modifying? Then there's that next phrase, eager to serve. Again, this is an attitude, but it's also a little more than that. Peter is putting this forward as something which we do not for the sake of a particular outcome here and now, but because it is what we should be wanting to do. In terms of developing habits and creating a situation where the action required is also the goal, rather than having an external goal, can be incredibly useful as it eliminates some demotivators and creates room for grace. The example I'm going to use may be problematic for some people due to current prevailing narratives, but I am still going to use it as it's one of the most readily understood illustrations for the concept. Currently, our society has some very strong social narratives around body image and size, which are justified through a false equivalency with fitness and health. This results in weight loss being a very common goal among people, including some who should absolutely not be losing weight. The issue with this is that statistically, intentional weight loss has very low success rates, to the point where if it were a medication, it would likely not pass clinical trials to make it to market. That doesn't mean it happened, and if you are in the statistical minority that has had real success, don't let anyone who is not a relevantly qualified medical professional talk you out of it. Yet, when society talks about fitness, weight loss is the primary goal and the primary indicator of success. What this means is people embark on a fitness plan to lose weight. They exercise, they make healthier food choices, they try to reduce stress and improve sleep patterns, and then they plateau. They stop losing weight, they might even gain weight. And for a lot of people, what then happens is they let their new healthy practices drop off, because why put in the effort if it's not working? If the goal is unachievable, why bother? What people don't realise when they're focusing on weight loss as the goal is that they were improving their health regardless of that outcome. They were building muscle, they were strengthening bones, they were improving nutrition, but the failure to reach a goal means they give up on that. The flip side of that is that when you make the activity the goal, you decide that you want to run 3 times a week, or lift weights, or swim regularly, or eat a wider variety of plants, then every time you act on that, it is its own reward. Every run or swim you do is an achievement. Every serve of fruits and veggies is the goal. You stay motivated because you can clearly see that you are achieving something. You don't hold on to guilt about the week of holidays where you just lay around and eat the most unhealthy but enjoyable food you can find, because the next day you go for a run and eat a salad and you're back on track. You're achieving your goals. You have created habits that you can maintain because they do not require external validation to feel like an achievement. And that is what serving God because you're eager to serve is about. The act of service is its own goal. It doesn't need external validation to be worthwhile. That doesn't mean you are going to feel enthusiastic about things every single day. You are human, you get tired, you get sick, you have off days. But it means you can create a habit of eagerness to serve, where most of the time your yes can be enthusiastic and genuine. Verse 3 and 4 say, "Don't lord it over people, lead by example, and then you will receive a crown of never-ending glory and honour." Now, as an Australian and an introvert, I feel weird about the crown of never-ending glory thing. It's not something I relate to or find particularly appealing. To quote a certain politician who's been getting a lot of attention recently, I don't like it. But the fact that the phrase doesn't comfortably strike a chord with me, that I don't like that phrase, doesn't mean I can't pick up the vibe of the thing, which is that we are not seeking power and honour through authority here on earth, here and now on earth. I can talk, I promise that. The only form of that which matters will come later. What does resonate with me is don't lord it over people and lead by example. If you are in a position of authority and are lording it over people, you are leaning heavily into delegated authority, which I spoke about earlier. That means you are wielding authority that is granted by a position you hold, and that authority begins and ends with that position. Wielding authority like that also limits the relationships you can develop with people, forcing some distance into community. To have lasting impact and influence with people, whether or not you have delegated authority, you need to be working with relational authority as your preferred method. That means coming alongside people, being authentically what God made you to be, living and demonstrating the things you are talking about. Peter goes on to say, "In the same way, you who are younger must accept the authority of the elders, and all of you dress yourselves in humility as you relate to one another, for God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. So humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time he will lift you up in honour." Accepting authority is not something Australians tend to be keen on doing. It's also often not something young people feel great about. We push boundaries and question rules. That is a normal part of being human and can be healthy and important. But in a healthy community, Elders should have maturity and wisdom, and young people and those new to the community should seek out advice and listen to what they are told. If you listen to people who are more experienced and hopefully now wiser than you currently are, you can avoid some problems and not make the same mistakes previous generations have made. That said, people are fallible and sometimes people end up with authority they shouldn't have. Accepting authority doesn't always mean blindly following it. It can mean respectfully questioning things. It can mean putting forward an argument for change. At times, it can mean willful disobedience with the recognition that there may be consequences enacted. But what any of that must be paired with is being humble. To be humble is not something Peter directs at the youth. That a statement is addressed to all of you. All of you includes the elders, the youth, anyone who is part of the church. Humility is an interesting concept in our society. We have a blend of tall poppy syndrome with a bit of celebrity worship. We don't like people that think too much of themselves, but if you're writing a job application, you need to present yourself as the most confident, competent and skilled human in existence. We talk about being humiliated and being humbled as a negative thing that happens to someone. Obviously, that person deserved to be humbled and shouldn't have thought so much of themselves, so it's right, but it's also a negative. But here we aren't talking about humbleness being a thing inflicted on you. It's a choice, an action that you undertake. To be humble doesn't mean you downplay your skills or gifts or overestimate your negative traits. It means having an honest understanding of who you are, your skills, your weaknesses, your place in community, and having an outward focus rather than a self-centred one. Humility should drive us to community because community is where my weaknesses intersect with someone else's strengths, where my skill set enhances what someone else is doing. Humility should show us our strengths and weaknesses are often directly related, and that where people can truly thrive is in a community where each person is in a role that suits the way they are created, rather than in an individualised society where people are supposed to do it all on their own or in a very small family unit. Now, this is not a call to go and live in a little commune or something like that. I am an introvert, no. I need my space in order to function. I'm not going to encourage that. But it is a call to be intentional about being connected to other people, to see how our strengths can help people, but also to recognise our limitations, to learn not only how to contribute to things, but how to find balance and to know how to say no to the right things so that our yeses can be genuinely enthusiastic and joyful. Humility also means recognising that your limits will be different to other people's. There will be some things you may be able to do more, there will be some things you will need to do less. And in some seasons of life, that capacity may change. Now, I'm going to use myself as an example here, which always feels weird when you're talking about humility, but also I don't like pulling anyone else into it. Some of you will have noticed that at the moment I'm on base every Sunday, and some of you will think that is a lot of work for one person to be doing that often. As a general rule, you would be right. It is a lot to expect someone to do something like that every week. But I'm not a general rule. I am an individual who happens to be a tad neurospicy, which means I'm wired to function a little differently. Thanks to the way my brain works, a Sunday where I'm on base actually works out to be a lower net energy output than a Sunday where I'm just sitting in the congregation, which makes that everyday Sunday commitment reasonable and sustainable for me. Yes, that's a bit weird. I don't expect most of you to understand how that can work. Some of the people who do understand that can work will be on other teams because they've inserted themselves in similar sort of situations. And no, you can't assume anyone else functions like that unless they tell you directly that that's the case. The flip side of that is that some of you are really good at making connections with people, welcoming people, starting conversations, getting people introduced. Some of you actually find that energising. I don't understand how you do that. It is far from the way that I function. But as part of the church community, I appreciate what you do because it is essential for a healthy community to have that connection. If we aren't humble enough to recognise the value of different people's skills and personalities and to accept their quirks and complications, because we all have those, then we limit what we can do and what our church community can do. Moving on, Peter continues, "Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. Stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Remember that your family of believers all over the world is going through the same kind of suffering that you are." Now, if you're following along in your Bible, you may notice that I have moved a line break in the formatting there. That is intentional because it's easy to skip over giving your cares and worries to God and to focus on the dramatic action bit of watching out for the enemy who prowls around like a roaring lion. The interesting thing about this is that a roaring lion is generally not actively hunting. Loudly announcing your presence is not conducive to catching prey. The thing there is, lions are social animals. They tend to operate in a pride. If you encounter a hungry lion which is roaring, he's not looking to make the kill himself. He's looking to scare prey to where the rest of the pride is hiding, ready to strike. When you focus too hard on looking out for big external threats, for watching out for the big things that might happen, you miss the little things that eat away at you, the little anxieties that drag you down, the little concerns that gnaw away at your peace, the small individual choices that shouldn't matter, except that you keep doing them and they become a habit. This is why you need to give your worries and cares to God. Make the time to pray about it, to spend time with God, and pass those things on to him, no matter how insignificant they may seem. The things you're overthinking, those flaws that you recognise through trying to be humble, the next step there, after acknowledging them, is to hand it to God and shift your focus off yourself. If you avoid dealing with what seem like small problems in order to remain vigilant for a big one that may or may not occur, the little things will wear you down and bleed you dry. That doesn't mean the big threats aren't there or can just be ignored when they crop up, but don't let that distract you from what is happening in the here and now. Back to Peter's words, in his kindness, God called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Jesus Christ. So after you have suffered a little while, he will restore, support, and strengthen you. He will place you on a firm foundation. All power to him forever. Amen. What we are experiencing here and now is temporary. On the scale of eternity, what each of us experience in this life will only be a little while. That doesn't mean it will be nothing, or that it's meaningless, or that we shouldn't care about trying to make here and now better for people who are suffering. Some people like to focus heavily on eternity and what heaven might be like. I personally don't focus that way, so I don't speak heavily about that. I expect it to be incredible, but I also recognise that it is well beyond my current comprehension. My current task is in the here and now, so that is where I focus the majority of my attention. Now, I'm going to invite the band back up as I wrap this up. I'm not going to do a deep dive into Peter's sign-off for this letter. Some people do like doing that, but there's already a lot going on and a lot for you to think about, so I don't think at this point that would be helpful. Before I do close off with this translation of Peter's words, I will point out there are some cultural differences going on. If you try to take the first part of verse 14 literally, make sure you're asking permission first. I am an introvert, the answer is no. I expect that to be the most common answer in this cultural context. But this letter is written by a real person to real people in a real cultural context, and it meant things to them. And Peter signed off, "I have written and sent this short letter to you with the help of Silas, whom I commend to you as a faithful brother. My purpose in writing is to encourage you and assure you that what you are experiencing is truly part of God's grace for you. Stand firm in this grace. Your sister church here in Babylon sends you greetings, as does my son Mark. Greet each other with a kiss of love. Peace be with all of you.